Hello, I am Matt Suess, and I am going to give you a behind-the-scenes look at how I process and enhance my photos using ON1 Photo 10. Now, I shoot in RAW, and I personally prefer Capture One Pro for my raw photo processing over Lightroom. I get better highlight and shadow recovery with less noise. I'm able to work in layers, and I also have better, more advanced controls over color, and I just end up getting a better image out of Capture One Pro. So I'm going to show you this photo here. This was photographed in the Tetons in the spring, and right now it looks like garbage. It is, you're looking at it with no adjustments at all. This is straight out of the camera, and it looks really dark because I photograph so that I don't blow out my highlights, and I set my exposure based on that. And I don't even have to do any exposure bracketing for the majority of my photos anymore because I'm able to pull out so much shadow detail out of my RAW files in Capture One Pro that I just don't need to bracket anymore. So what ends up happening is my raw files straight out of the camera, they look like garbage. So this photo here, I'm going to show you what it looks like afterwards. I've already gone through and I've made all the adjustments here, and we'll just take a quick look through them. I've adjusted the color balance, I've increased the exposure a little bit, and also the saturation. By increasing the exposure, it did start to blow out my highlights, so I had to pull those down, and so I increased my highlight slider to recover highlight detail, and I also increased the shadow detail. And look at how much shadow detail I was already able to get, and this is only at 40%. So there's still a lot more shadow detail I could pull out of here, so it just gives you a good idea on how good Capture One Pro is at pulling out shadow detail. And I've also added a little bit of clarity and structure to it. Now, I mentioned that Capture One Pro can work in layers, and I have already added a layer in here, and let's turn this layer off to see what I did. So I have a new layer in here, and what that did, I did that so that I could increase the color and give the sky a much richer blue color than what it had originally when I was making all these global adjustments. Now with the layers, I'm making a localized adjustment, and I was just selecting the blue and working on that. And that's where this color editor comes in handy, where if I open this up, I can just show you real quick. It has an eyedropper, and I can select the color range that I want, and I can fine tune it over here in this dial in the center here. And it gives you a real neat way of looking at things too, because I can select just the color range that I'm trying to select. So basically think of this as a masking for color. It's showing you a mask preview. And let me turn that off. And so once I selected the color range that I wanted to, I was able to adjust the hue of the blue, also its saturation, and I darkened it just a little bit. Now, if you do work in Capture One Pro, note that it doesn't accept any Photoshop type plugins, so ON1 Photo does not work inside of Capture One, but to be honest, even when I'm working in Lightroom or Photoshop, I prefer to use ON1 Photo as a standalone program anyways. I just feel it runs a little bit better as a standalone as opposed to inside another program. So a couple ways you can get your photo out of Capture One. You can go to the File menu and go down to Open With, and then select ON1 Photo 10. Generally, I don't do that. Usually I'm working on a bunch of raw files at once, processing them, and then I export them. And I export them into an export folder that I have on my external hard drive. And the great thing about ON1 Photo 10 is that you can have in your favorites folders are now watched by ON1, so that as soon as a photo pops in there, ON1 knows about it. And so once I export it out of Capture One Pro, I can go right into ON1 Photo 10 and my photo will be inside there. Now I've now switched over to ON1 Photo 10, and I already have this photo loaded up in the effects module. And this is where I really stylize my photos. And I have three key filters that I use on almost all my landscape photos. And those are the tone enhancer, the color enhancer, and the dynamic contrast. And I usually start out with those three and then move on from there. So let's take a look at the tone enhancer. And I'm going to turn off the auto settings, and I'm going to open up my histogram, and I'm going to increase my whites just a little bit to brighten this photo up a little. And let's see, the compression slider is a real nice slider. If you don't use this, this is a real fabulous slider for knocking down your brighter areas of the photo and bringing up your shadow areas of the photo. And I use that on a lot of my photos. And I don't want to actually have almost too much shadow detail, so I'm going to lower my shadow detail just a little bit. And I'm going to add just a little bit of detail and a little bit of clarity. And I'm not going to go crazy adding a whole lot, because I'll add a lot more when I'm in the dynamic contrast, but I like to just give it a little bit of a head start in the tone enhancer. And I'll take a before and after look, and let's go add another filter, and we'll go to the color enhancer. And I want to improve the color of this photo, make it a little bit more vivid, and looking at it, the greens are a little bit yellowish, so I want to add some more vibrancy to the green. Okay, so I'll start off with the saturation, and I'll increase that to where I like the setting, and looks like about 15 is going to work on this here. And now in the color range, that's set to adjust the saturation for everything. I'm going to click on where it says all, and I'm going to go down into the green channel first. Now, if you're adjusting your greens, you'll find that green occupies the green channel and the yellow. So first I'll take a look at the green and see if it is actually, if I have any pixels in that range there. And an easy way to do it, just drag your brightness all the way down. And I could see that by doing that, I did have some of the green area did get darker, so I know I will be affecting part of that photo there. So I'm going to drag this away from yellow, drag my hue a little bit more to the right. And I'm also going to back off on the saturation a little bit. I don't want the green to become too powerful. I want it to look green, but not look really overblown. And let's go into the yellow now, and I'm going to lower my brightness. Now see, that's where the majority of my green is coming from, is in the yellow. So I'll zero out the brightness, and I'm going to adjust the hue, and this time I'm going to bring it to the right. And we can see if I go all the way over, it's giving me a real toxic green here. But it is good if you're getting used to these sliders to just bring it all the way to the left, see what it does, bring it all the way to the right, see what it does, and then back off from there. So I'm going to add just a little bit to the right, and then I'm going to back off on the saturation again just a little. And I'm going to go back to all and give just a little bit more overall saturation. Okay, let's add another filter. And I will select the dynamic contrast. And I'm going to back off on the large detail. And I'm going to increase the small detail. I have a lot of, these evergreens have a lot of tiny little branches there, and that's perfect for the small detail range. And let me just take a look at before and after on the detail. Now notice my sky. I'm going to go do this, turn this off again and turn it back on. I do not want all that detail in the sky. I don't want that dynamic contrast effect in the sky. So I'm going to come over here on the left hand side and click on my quick mask tool. And I'm going to use my bracket keys to shrink the size down a little. And I'm going to go through here. And we're just going to wait for the mouse to catch up with me. I got a couple programs running in the background here, and also the screen recording software really taxes my laptop computer. I got a 2013 MacBook Pro with only 8 gigabytes of RAM. And just make sure I select a nice range of the colors that I want to mask out. Okay. Let's take a look at my mask now. That did a really good job. Looks like a little bit along the edges there that I'll have to clean up. So I'll zoom in. And I'll go up to the navigator and drag over. And I'm going to use the masking brush. I'm going to turn on my perfect brush. And I am also going to turn off my pressure opacity. I'm using a Wacom tablet and pen, and ON1 Photo 10 can use the pressure sensitivity of the pen, but I don't want it for this masking, so I'm going to turn that off. Okay, so what I want to do is get rid of this halo here, so I want to lock in the color on my perfect brush. So I'm going to hit the Command key on my Mac, and I'm just going to paint out And what this is doing is it's affecting just that color range that I first selected when I clicked down on the mouse, and that's it. Now that color range only exists down here and not up on top here, so now I'm going to come right next to the branches and select that color range, and now that'll allow me to mask out around the trees, and I'm going to keep on going with it until I notice it's not taking anything out anymore. And it looks like right about here. So I'll select again from the color range and come right up over the mountain. And I'm going to make another selection over here by clicking on the mouse, still holding onto that command key. And I'm going to drag over to the right. Get rid of this yellow down here. And I'll probably have to do one more selection here on the color. Nope, looks like I'll have to do another one. Okay, real super fast, quick, easy masking even through branches on an evergreen tree. Alright, let's turn off my preview. And if I turn dynamic contrast on and off again, we can see that it's only affecting where I wanted it, and that is down in the bottom part of the photo, not affecting the sky. Alright, now that I've done my 3 main filters that like I said, I almost always use on all my landscape photos, I'm going to add another filter. And this one here, the sunshine filter, I like checking out every once in a while to see what it does. And one of my favorite presets in there is the Radiance. And so I'm going to select the Radiance and increase the saturation a little bit. And let's see, I'm going to add just a little bit of glow. Now this look right now, I like the overall look of it, but it's too strong. So what I'm going to do is back off on the opacity. So I blend that look in without the intensity that I would have had at 100%. Let's turn that sunshine layer on and off. So here it is off and then back on. You can see how it gave a little bit more richness to the color of the photo. Okay, now at this stage here, I've done all the color and tonal adjustments that I need to do for this photo, and what I need to do now is start working on some localized adjustments using the adjustment brush and the adjustable gradient. And what I've found is that once I've gotten my color and my tone all set, before I start jumping into the adjustment brushes, I like to save the photo and then get out of effects and then go back in. Now I didn't open this up as a smart photo so that when I open it up again I won't have all those layers anymore. And without having all those layers, the more layers that you have in here, the faster the computer you're going to need. And you know, my computer's already a couple years old. It only has 8 gigabytes of RAM, so I got to kind of work inside the specs of my system here. And for me, I found that it's a lot easier if I just hit save. I know my color and tone adjustments are all set. I don't need the smart photo, so I don't need to open up those panels anymore. If I need to make some fine tuning to that, I can certainly open up one of those filters again and do some more adjustments from there. But it's just going to make my life a little bit easier when I'm using the adjustment brushes. Okay, so I'm back in Browse, and I'm going to go back into Effects, and I'm going to just edit the original so that it's going to write over this copy here. Okay, and as we can see, I don't have those filters anymore. So let's add a adjustable gradient because I want to darken the sky. And I'm going to switch to darken. And I'll drag this up. And let's see, I'm going to increase the feathering to make that transition a little bit, or a lot more smooth. And even drag this up a little bit more. And I'm going to lower the opacity of this layer. I don't want to make it too dark, but I do want to just darken that sky down a little bit. Let's take a look at the before and after. So that's a pretty good adjustment right there. Okay, now for a couple other localized adjustments. One of the last things that I do is I use the adjustment brushes, both the light and the dark brushes, to do some dodging and burning inside of my photo. So I'm going to select the adjustment brush in my filter panel over here, and it starts off with the lighten. I'm going to lower my brush opacity a little bit and bring that down to about 68. I'm going to turn on my perfect brush, and I'm also now going to turn on my pressure sensitivity. So the harder I press, the more I get to that 68% in the opacity. And I'm going to zoom in here. Now what I want to do in the dodging and burning is really brightening up the brighter tree areas and darkening the darker areas of the trees. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to paint in here, and I'm going to brighten up these trees over here that already have a little bit of a brightness to them in contrast to the darker trees in back. And I'll select these over here as well. And let's see, grab some of these, lighten those up a little bit, and I'm just going to lighten the edges of this tree. And we'll get this area over here. Okay, let's take a look at what I just did on this. You can see before and after. See how they stand out now in comparison to the trees in the background, especially this section over here. I'm just running the brush over that again. So let me turn that off and then back on. So now I'm going to add another filter, and I'm going to add another adjustment brush. And this time I'm going to use the darken. And then what I'm going to do is darken the trees behind the lighter ones. And this will make those trees stand out even more. And the overall effect ends up being a more three-dimensional look to the photos. You're creating depth with light and shadow. And you're able to do that really well with the adjustment brushes and the perfect brush inside of ON1 Photo 10. So darken this area here. Get that section, and I'm going to scroll over. And get that. And then I also want to come down here. This little foreground area is just a little too dark and distracting, so I'll darken that area down. And darken this corner down. And let's see, I'm even going to darken just the bottom of this grass here. And I will go back to my adjustment brush that I was lightening and just run that over the top. And that's going to give me just a little bit of depth up on top there on this grass right in my foreground. And go back to my darken brush. And I'll scroll over and just darken this little area here. Okay, let's take a look at that now. So the adjustments that I've now made locally, just the preview off and on. And look at when I turn that preview off and then come back on, look at how those trees just really jump out now on the horizon. Okay, that is all that I want to do for this photo. I'm really happy with this, so I'm going to hit save, and it'll bring me back into the browser. And let's take a look at the after and the before. So this was coming out of Capture One Pro, and it looked pretty decent just in and of itself, but I was able to enhance it and really make it come alive inside of effects inside of ON1 Photo 10. And so that really just gives you a really good idea on how my workflow is. It's really a two-stage part where I get the raw file looking decent enough out of Capture One Pro to then bring into ON1 Photo 10 and to really make it come alive and really put my own personal style on my photos and my own personal look to them. Now before I leave, I did want to mention real quickly that if you go to my website, mattsuess.com, MATTSUESS.com, and click on the workshop link, I do teach ON1 Photo 10 in 2-day classroom courses in Tempe, and I'll be teaching them in Bozeman and Dallas and Santa Fe and Sedona and all over the place. And I also do that online too. I have an online course that's going to be coming out. Look for that at the end of at the end of November. And I also teach field workshops in the Tetons and Sedona and in Zion. I also have private one-on-one instruction, either in person or online via a shared screen using Skype. And here's my pre-recorded classes. I have a bunch of cloud backgrounds that you can use inside of ON1 Photo 10 to replace boring skies, and even some free stuff for you too. Some free tutorials on post-processing, and also some free presets for Lightroom and for Perfect Photo Suite, and those presets for Perfect Photo Suite work inside of ON1 Photo 10 as well. And lastly, I'd like to invite you to a group that I just created on Facebook, the ON1 Photo Users group. And here in this group, I post some behind-the-scenes information on what I'm working on with inside of ON1, some tips and tricks. And you're free to post photos asking for critiques and ask questions, as well as sharing your own photos. And it's all about ON1 Photo in this group, so definitely invite you over to that. And I want to thank ON1 for inviting me to this Pro Photo series, and I hope this has been beneficial to you and given you a couple ideas on how to post-process your own photos and enhance them and give them your own look and really make them pop with ON1 Photo 10. Thanks for watching.